Hello, everyone. We'll give everybody a minute to join us, but we are so excited to have you here from across all of our GuideWell brands. Welcome to The Truth About College Admissions. Okay. I am Carly Nuzzo. I am a college counselor and the director of undergraduate mentorship and graduate admissions with one of our GuideWell brands, ESM Prep. We are excited to have all of you from, again, across all of our brands, from ESM, Appleruth, MAP, Summit, wherever you might be from. We are excited to have you here. And this is a really dynamic, engaging conversation that we're going to have today. Please submit your questions, but when you do so, be sure to submit them through the Q&A function. The chat won't be visible for the panel. So please make sure that you use the Q&A function, and you don't have to worry about scribbling down your notes. We will share the recording afterwards. If you miss anything, or if you want to share this recording with someone in your life, you can do so. So we will get that out to you after tonight's presentation. But we are so excited to have an incredible session for you tonight with two amazing speakers. Oh, I forgot to mention, a poll is going out right now. Our speakers would really love to know who's in our audience. They can best ask and answer questions that will pertain to you. So please take a second to fill out that welcome poll. As we welcome our two speakers tonight, Rick and Paul are absolute rock stars in the college admissions world with more than 60 years of experience between them. If there's a major outlet talking about college admissions, chances are they've been quoted in it, and they're still helping families, counselors, and colleges make sense of the process today. Our first speaker, Paul Kanarek, is the moderator. He's a globally recognized expert in college admissions and high stakes testing. He founded the Princeton Review in California in 1983 and later went on to lead CollegeWise as CEO starting in 2015. Over the years, he's been quoted in major media outlets, appeared on TV, and spoken to audiences around the world about US college admissions. Paul is widely regarded as a go-to voice on testing and admissions, and he's known for his energetic and insightful style and for genuinely loving the chance to help families feel more confident and find colleges where students really thrive. Rick Clark is the Executive Director of Strategic Student Access at Georgia Tech, where he's committed to opening doors and expanding opportunities for students from all backgrounds. He spent more than 15 years leading Georgia Tech's undergraduate admissions team and has also worked in admissions at Georgia State and Wake Forest. So he's seen the process from many different angles. Rick is a co-author of The Truth About College Admission, a family guide in getting and staying together, along with the companion workbook and podcast by the same name, and also serves as several advisory and governing boards for higher education at state, regional, and national levels. Most importantly, Rick is known for making the admissions process feel less stressful and more real, shifting the focus from prestige to fit, potential, and possibility, and helping families feel more grounded and hopeful along the way. I am going to pass it off to our amazing speakers, and please don't forget to use the Q&A function.
Well, Rick, we're going to have to live up to those sterling words.
Absolutely.
As an aside, gang, for those of us who sort of operate in the admissions space, GuideWell and all the others, Rick is our true north, and he has been for several years. And, if we're having a bad day, we'll just pull up a blog post of Rick's that just makes us feel good in the work that we do. And sort of like, I know I'm screaming into the void. I can see you, Rick. Rick, the number of times you have centered me during my worst moments is legion. I'm incredibly grateful to that work. And I know when you're sort of sitting at a keyboard writing, you don't know the impact, but I'm telling you, it is profound and real, and I so appreciate it. Your reward is to finally have a Georgia Tech football team that is not embarrassingly
Yes.
bad.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
it, enjoy this, and it segues nicely into our first question, which is around trends. So clearly there's an upward trend for the Yellow Jackets. They're playing much better.
That's
But
right.
what have you noticed within the last year with either the data or qualitatively that you're seeing in applicants and applications?
Mhm. Sure. So I think one of the big things, and this is true at Georgia Tech, but it's true nationally as well, is that increasingly students are applying early, whether that be early action or early decision. However, the, and this has spiked, and actually in talking to a couple friends recently saying similar things. We actually keep track of students in raw number, not on individual level, that are literally applying on the day before or the day of the application deadline. And so when you say the word spike, that's exactly what comes to mind, is how, you'll be on just like a steady little trend, and then, man, you're thinking you're way behind on applications and where are they? And all of a sudden on that last day or day of, just up and through the roof. So I think I need to look at it again, but last year we had several different deadlines. And if you look at the deadline itself or the day before the deadline, I think it was like 60% of the students applied on those, singular days. So,
That's
hey,
insane.
it's it's significant. There's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, that's not something that gets factored in by any means to the admission review process, but I do think it speaks to what we're talking about tonight, which is sort of this idea of a little bit of anxiety and concern, and students they're done with it. They're just holding on to it and feeling nervous. I mean, I've even talked to some students really in the last week or two before some of these deadlines who are expressing that kind of visceral, relief almost when they submit it, but like real anxiety and hitting the button. And that is super interesting to me. I feel like that has been exacerbated, maybe not in the last year, but certainly in the last couple of years.
That's actually a really good point, Rick. And we talk about this sort of within the profession. Um, there's a psychological thing that when a 3-year-old is being potty trained, they don't flush the toilet. And what they've realized is the kid doesn't flush the toilet because whatever's in there they made, and they don't want it to go to a place that they cannot see. And so students have such little control, Rick, over their destiny. The moment they hit send on the Common App, it
Yeah,
disappears into the void and they have lost all control. And so we do see this a lot within the
yeah.
student community of waiting to the last second to send.
Mhm.
And you're right. I think that whilst it has nothing to do with admissions,
Yeah,
it does put a psychological toll on kids. I think it's a
it
very good
does.
point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I honestly, that's a lot of why we wrote the book, why I have tried to be consistent in writing that blog. And, we do the podcast, which is talking to people around the country, because I think the more we can, bring some humanity and pull back the veil of what's happening once you do hit submit. I mean, I get that. That makes total sense to me. That when a student hits submit, they've worked on this, they feel like they have put so much into it. And frankly, in a lot of ways, they feel like they're going to be judged. So outside of even just losing control, there's a feeling, a true and legitimate feeling of, I'm going to now be judged. But I think if we can roll it back and show, hey, look, on the other side of this, these are just people. And here's what's happening. To the best of our ability, we want to help you understand that. No, we cannot fully take away that stress they may feel, but we can certainly give some reality and some hopefully levity at times of what's going to be happening.
And Rick, just to be clear, I want to reinforce that the fact that an application arrives on November 1st does not make it better or worse that one arrived on October 15th. So you're just collecting them, and then they'll sort of be read en masse. They're not being read as they come in.
Generally, no. I mean, certainly not speaking for every school around the country, but the truth is that most schools, especially these schools with the early action or early decision, I mean, those staffs are on the road recruiting and working to, host students. And so really, in truth, I mean, even if applications have been coming in, sure, some of that might be reviewed, but no decisions are being made. And the vast majority are going to come in once the staff is back to read them anyway.
Makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
Now, you spoke eloquently as usual to the humanistic principle of admissions, and you want to be kind and you want to reduce stress. So all of which I believe you believe, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And yet we've seen this resurgence in standardized testing, which is the direct opposite of everything we just talked about.
All right.
Can you give some insight for our audience as to why standardized testing, and by that I mean the SAT and the ACT, is coming back with such a vengeance at a certain level of institution?
So, I mean, I have a couple thoughts on that. One is that in some places there is legitimate political pressure. And that doesn't necessarily mean like legislative, although in some way, in some places that's true. If it's a public system or a public institution, there may be governmental oversight and legislative pressure that brings that about. That is true. I think though that there's, we colleges and certainly we enrollment and admission folks, we serve a lot of different constituencies. And so political pressure in that regard, that boards, that people that are serving on boards of trustees or executive leadership teams, either because of what they're seeing in the ecosystem around, right, are making these type of decisions for their institution because they don't want to be the odd man out, or they're kind of seeing a certain trend and don't want to lose out on that. I think that's part of it. I mean, I do think that in some cases, as application pools go up, especially at more selective places, test scores can be one other way to give another data point and another piece of information that helps make already challenging decisions, right? So maybe just a little bit more rounded in their decision. Like, hey, if we can triangulate on this, and this is one more piece of data and criteria, could be helpful to us. So I think those are the two primary reasons.
And are you still test optional?
We were only test optional for 1 year. So at Georgia Tech, we're part of a system, and that was a decision made by our board of regents.
And so what we've noticed is that some of the, like, I think Georgia and I think Florida and I think Texas have gone back to standardized testing. A lot of the Ivy Leagues have gone back to testing. Now there's about 2,800 colleges, maybe 40 or 50 of them require standardized testing. If you were to guess on the Rick crystal ball, are we going to go to sort of a stasis state, or do you think more and more schools are going to start requiring tests again? What's your best guess?
I think we're getting there to stasis. The public systems that, as you mentioned, and listed a couple of these, that went back are probably there to stay. Now, granted, in a lot of those states, only portions of their system are requiring tests. Like here in Georgia, we have 25 public universities, and I think at this point, just a fraction of those are requiring testing. Similarly, on the kind of highly selective side around the country, those schools that have gone back, again, many of the Ivies, are back to testing, and some of those that are in that same sort of stratosphere have also gone back. But the truth is that if you look at where we are right now with the demographics of the number of students that are going to college, what we have in terms of the international uncertainty at best in terms of that pipeline of students, many schools don't want to put up additional barriers or add requirements at a time when they're already challenged to make their class or to have the ability to shape their class.
So You work at Georgia Tech. You're iconic within the space, but Georgia Tech really sort of sits astride two different verticals. It's a phenomenal STEM school. It's a highly selective college. Both of those statements are true, although the second one is fairly recent within sort of your experience.
Right.
Um, so when you get a test score, there's a lot of fear around test scores. I'll give you an example. Let's say that Georgia Tech says that the average SAT score is 1520
Mhm.
and a kid has a 1460.
Mhm.
And she goes, "Oh my goodness, I can't submit this. I need to take the test again." Or a kid with a 1520 says, "If I have a 1520, clearly 1570 would be better and I'd be more alluring as a candidate."
Yeah.
So I would like you to either disabuse people of this notion or affirm that it's correct. Have at it.
Yeah. I would like to disabuse people of that notion. At least speaking for Georgia Tech. And, I do think this is largely true around the country. I mean, you're an expert in this area, and the people that design and build the tests will say the same thing. When you are looking at ranges like that, small ranges, I mean, you were talking about margin of error and zero predictive value of that test score to how the student is actually going to retain or perform on that college campus. In other words, take your examples of, I think you said maybe a 1550 and a 1570, or any other 20-point band or 50-point band that you can name, 1430 to 1480. We know, as professionals doing admission and enrollment, that score, first of all, I mean, at those points, you're talking about the top 3-4% of global test takers anyway. In the 1500s, you're up to like the top 2% of global test takers. But that is not going to have any significant or correlative value when it comes to what our job really is. And that is ensuring that we're enrolling students who will do well and stay and ultimately graduate. So I would say for sure disabuse of that notion.
Thank you. I tried to leave it open-ended because I have such a firm position on this. I think that the best way to view test scores at highly selective colleges, it's a light switch. It's a binary thing.
Mhm.
If your score is good enough, they don't care anymore. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you're good at standardized tests. What else do you have? If your score is not good enough, you've got a sort of slightly more of an uphill climb. Here is a really interesting question. There's growing conflict around early decision. Part of that conflict is the perception that might be true that it favors the wealthy.
Sure.
Part of that conflict is that there is a lawsuit coming up that sort of says early decision should be sort of stricken from the lexicon. Do you expect early decision to disappear, or do you truly do not know?
I truly do not know. I would hesitate to put, a wager down on what's going to happen there. I really would. Because you're right that there is conversation around this, possible lawsuits happening, and there will be pressure applied. However, I've also seen time and time again that there ends up sometimes when it does lean, as you said, toward resourced students or families, that what you think might actually happen or what seems to be the tea leaves that you're reading in a certain direction don't actually go that way. So I would say right now, too hard to tell for sure.
Okay. One of the things is a sidebar, gang. And we sort of, I see questions popping in and I'm trying to weave them in as we go. And some of them are too broad for us to sort of handle. Um, I promise what you should be getting a sense of is that Rick will answer any question and he'll answer it openly and honestly and directly. Here's what I cannot promise you. I cannot promise you that you'll like the answer. I mean, that is the nature of truthful responses. They are his truth based upon his, decades of experience. And that's what we're going to try and do here. We didn't want this to sort of be the normal pablum. We're trying to get to pieces that are harder. Now, when we spoke about early decision, and you also spoke about standardized testing, Rick, you brought up politics a couple of times. And I do not want to go down a political rabbit hole because it doesn't sort of matter what our individual politics are or are not.
Sure.
But the political ecosystem and kids who are interested in scientific research as undergrads. What advice would you give a parent in this climate who is interested in scientific research for their kids when so much federal funding funds said research? And you can duck it if you want. I don't think you will, but have at it.
So it's a great question. That is true, that there's uncertainty right now and fragility right now as it relates to federal funding for scientific research. That said, the truth is, though, at these places, for undergrads in particular, that's really what we're talking about. We're not talking about master's or PhD students. We're talking about undergrads. The opportunities that these students are still going to have at places that lean into research are world-class facilities with world-class professors, right? That is not going to be an imminent change or shift, regardless of exactly what is happening in the ecosystem around federal funding. They are looking right now for lots of different opportunities. I mean, the truth is that there could be some real opportunity and value in not being so reliant on federal funds for some of the research that matters the most. And that's where, at least here at Georgia Tech, some of the conversations are going on. And that is, where else might we seek private-public partnerships? Where else might we be able to continue the good work that's happening, the important research that's occurring? So if I am a parent, I have a junior and a freshman. So, this isn't hypothetical to me. I would not hesitate at all to send my now junior son to a STEM heavy or research, 1A university, because of anything that's happening in that kind of outside landscape. The quality is still there in terms of facilities, quality is still there in terms of the professors, and the creativity is still there in terms of finding how to keep the work moving.
Love that answer. Thank you. And it has informed my future answer to that question. It's popped up a couple of times. And it's very much in the sweet spot of your title around student access. Life favors the wealthy. They drive nicer cars, they live in nicer homes, they live longer lives, they can afford tutors, they can afford standardized test help, they can afford, private counselors. They don't have to worry so much about paying for college. So they have all of these advantages. How do I level the playing field if I'm not a millionaire, if I'm a normal middle class kid, if we don't come from much money? This is something you believe passionately in. How do I stand a chance going up against these moneyed resourced people?
Well, one thing I will say, and we might get into this in a different part of the conversation today, is surrounds artificial intelligence, actually. As you're speaking to the resources and the support that is around students, just specifically as it relates to applying to college and the college admission process and experience. This is where I'm actually very bullish on the rise of and the now ubiquitous, presence of artificial intelligence. Because I've used, and I'm guessing you and a lot of your colleagues at Guidewell have as well, using artificial intelligence to help students with their college search and looking for places that are looking for students like them, to help students with thinking about, for instance, and this is a place I've seen students get very anxious or just not really know how to get started, and that is on the activities section of the Common application. What are they looking for? How do I kind of put things in there? How do I order them and prioritize them and describe them? This is a great use of artificial intelligence. And it's the kind of thing that a lot of people get paid, individual humans get paid a lot of money to give advice on. But what we're seeing out there right now is that AI is coming in and really, I wouldn't say completely leveling the playing field, but giving a lot of democratization to resources, similar with your writing, et cetera. So in that sense, I'm really excited about the access students now have, regardless of their financial backgrounds, to do a great job searching for schools and ultimately applying to schools.
Yeah, I'll use ChatGPT as an example. If you ask the right kinds of questions in the right kinds of way, I think you can get access to quality, nuanced data that used to be the purview exclusively of people like me. I love that term, democratization. I think those resources could be used well. I'll say this, it might be obvious, but you don't have them write your essays. And the reason you don't have ChatGPT write your essay is because ChatGPT is the accumulation of all human writing. If it was a color, it would be beige. And Rick doesn't want to read beige writing.
Yeah.
This is the land of magenta and fuchsia and chartreuse and all the other oddly named colors. Yeah, ChatGPT is a horror show when it comes to writing. And Rick, I'm guessing with your experience, it takes you all of 10 seconds to figure out whether a robot wrote it.
Yeah, I mean, that is, I love that. And if you're going to borrow my answer on
Yeah.
the prior question, I'm definitely using yours on the compilation of this is beige. So that is spot on. It's interesting because you don't have to go far to hear someone like myself on a panel or on a webinar or coming to your high school. When you say what makes a good essay, it's the exact opposite of what ChatGPT produces. We talk about we want to hear your voice. We talk about we want detail. We talk about we want specificity and unique, and that is not beige. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. Now, since we're on it real quickly, what I
Yeah.
do like though is this. You look at the Common App where a kid is asked to write a supplemental question, and gosh, they're applying to 10 schools. They're oftentimes writing 20 supplemental questions. It is I call this the tyranny of the blinking cursor, right? Where you are sitting in front of this keyboard after tennis practice at 10 p.m. and you have to do it, and your time is sort of the sand's going through the hourglass there, and you got to get it done. But which one do you choose? Because you do have choice on these essays. And how do you get started? And that's what I actually like a lot about throwing some ideas out, because this is what independent consultants or high school counselors can do when a student has access. It's just that they're usually not available at 11 p.m. when a kid's actually doing the work. And I think that's the thing as humans is oftentimes we struggle to get momentum. I want to get fit. I want to go for a run. Like just getting your shoes on and going out the door is sometimes the toughest thing. And that's true of writing essays, and that's true of just getting started. If you can throw out some ideas and respond and start working with it, I think this is a real opportunity, honestly, for students to just again, help them be more efficient, but also tamp down some of the anxiety they feel.
And there's another way to use ChatGPT as we sort of talk about this. Colleges often give you what we call a fit question, which is like, why do you want to come here? Like, why are you picking your major? And as Rick
Yeah.
points out, those can be difficult to start. And and honestly, as readers, we kind of have read our own website. We know what's available there. So ChatGPT is a great way to sort of like type in what you're interested in. And so
Yeah.
say, I love this, I love this, I love this, I love this. What kind of programs exist
Yeah.
at Georgia Tech? And then
Yes.
that can get you started as you begin to tell a story that isn't just sort of this blatant repatriation of their website. Now,
Yeah.
there's been a bunch of questions that have come in, Rick, about summer stuff.
Okay, great.
One flavor is, gosh, if I go to Georgia Tech for a summer program, take out Georgia Tech, put in Harvard, take out
Yeah,
Harvard, put
sure.
in UCLA, does
Yes.
it somehow advantage me in the admissions process? That is part A.
Okay.
And part B, there's this rise of pay-to-play programs, particularly around research
Yeah.
like a Lumiere or a Polygence. And how do you react to those as admissions readers? Take them in whichever order you want.
So does it give you an advantage for that institution? The answer is no in the admission process. Yes, in your evolution of understanding what you're looking for and, what it might mean to be a college student, right? There's a lot of value, I think, in a student being able to spend a week or two on a college campus and kind of live that life. There's tremendous value in that. Is that going to be points or advantage or, in really in any meaningful way, a leg up for that particular institution? It will not be, right? However, I do think that there could be some experiences that you have and some interactions that you might have there that could absolutely help you as you're working on your application or give you things to talk about in an interview, right? So in that sense, value, but not any correlative way to better admission chances because of that program and your participation in it. Largely, again, as you said, because these are pay to play. I mean, at least what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so, we are extremely well aware of that fact. Now, there are some that are selective, but the kind of student that is selected in and it's not pay to play was already going to be competitive for admission regardless, because if you're getting into some extremely selective summer program, there's a reason for that, and that would have made you equally competitive as a college applicant.
Yeah, and just to go completely sideways on this, gang, you should understand if your summer activity is working at Taco Bell, and you can tell us how it changed you, what you did with the money, and why you're there. That is as compelling as working on some neutron research at a company that you paid. It's because it's part of your own unique story. There's no pecking order of judgment. What we're sort of trying to do is get a picture of who you are as a human, your backstory, where you come from, and why you would do really well in the institution we call our home. That's why so many of the readers are people who went to the university themselves and loved it so much. They spent
Yeah.
2 more years sort of bringing in the next class of roommates. Rick, what do you want to throw in there?
I was just gonna say, I agree. In our book, we talk about these three I's. So involvement, impact, and influence. And when you think about like what is it that a college is valuing outside the classroom, that's really the idea. We want to see that you have been involved. Now, that could very well be in research, it could be in community service, it could be in leadership in the school or sports or who knows what, but that involvement. And then also being able to articulate and show that it's not just you've been there, you're photobombing the yearbook, your name's on a bunch of stuff, but you're legitimately like, that place is better because you were there. And I really do think you can sum up what admission readers are looking for in the rubric of their evaluation by saying this: will this student be missed, right? When they're gone, that's the kid that does the lighting for the drama club. And that sponsor is dreading the day that kid graduates, right? Because they are phenomenal. They have had a huge impact on that whole thing. Now, they never went out on the stage. Nobody probably knows their name, but they have had an impact on that particular leadership opportunity, right? And I think that is the thing to know. I talked to a girl recently at a coffee shop that I go to. She is the one family member. I'm sorry, she is the one employee who's a non-family member that they let open the store. This is a high school senior. And so to your point, her ability, I told her, this is gold. You need to make sure that when you apply to colleges, they know that. Because I would just as soon hear from a girl who's trusted by a family business to open the shop and be there alone as I would a kid who paid to go to some research opportunity.
Yeah, I actually really like the way you phrase that. Will they miss you when you are gone?
Mhm.
It's hard to be missed when you do 26 things.
Yeah,
So, there's this myth that was not a myth when you went to college in my era, back when pterodactyls, happily roamed the globe. Back in my era, the myth was that of the well-rounded student,
yeah,
right? That's not as true today. It's what Rick said, which is that you want to be someone who had an impact. You want to be someone who had influence, and if that's 2 or 3 things done well, that is perfectly fine. Now, you called out to this earlier. AI this, AI that, AI t'other. Clearly, AI has utility within the college admissions landscape from your side of the fence. I'll
right.
give an example. It's obvious that AI can compute GPAs more rapidly than humans can, so why not let them do that? How do you use AI at Georgia Tech, Part A? And where do you see AI coming into admissions regularly over the next 3 years?
Yeah. So you're right. What we're working on here and what most of my colleagues at similar institutions are talking about is, thank goodness, we are finally at a point where this perfunctory just soul-sucking, rudimentary work can be done by machines, which frankly do it better anyway. To your point, calculating GPAs. Here's something we do at Georgia Tech that needs to never, ever be done by a human in the future. And that is going into a transcript and looking for the student's highest math that they took. Then going over to a drop-down menu and selecting, BC Calculus or AP Statistics or whatever. We are now working on essentially reading transcripts and mapping that over so humans don't do it. So that is what predominantly schools are working on or already have implemented. What I think is coming and what is coming is two things. One, when you look at essays and recommendation letters, we use rubrics, right? So colleges create rubrics that evaluate these things. We have years of data, years of pre-read by humans information, and Virginia Tech is a great example of a school that's already implemented this. Going ahead and training the model to do a first read or a pre-read, because a lot of these schools, Georgia Tech being one of them, will hire 50, 60. Schools like UCLA will hire 120 seasonal readers to do a first read of an essay. If you can train your model so that it highlights certain things or brings in certain notes or does that first read for you, you can reallocate. You're still going to have a human look at it as a second reader. You're still going to go to committee and do all that, but you can get there a lot faster. That's one thing. The other thing that I would just say is I believe that what AI is going to do is it's going to really pester the minds of more and more admission directors and deans to say, yes, there's times where we absolutely can tell this was written by AI. No, we cannot always do that. And I think that's going to drive people so crazy that they're eventually going to say, we have got to implement other mediums of expression. And that's going to open the door for more videos, for more voice, recordings, for different, again, opportunities for students to demonstrate the things we always say we want to know. Personality, voice, what makes you unique, details. The truth is these are digital natives who carry phones around in their pocket and can probably do it better in different mediums than a conventional essay. And frankly, right now, college admission folks are not reading to grade writing. That's not what we do. And if we really care about a student's ability to write, they can upload previously written essays, and we can use any kind of AI tool we want for that.
Something just came up that I think is interesting because on the surface,
Yeah.
it seems simple, but my instinct says it is not.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a school like Tech, what's more important? Having the IB full diploma or the loftiest math class taken? Like I did multivariate calculus as a junior, but I'm also IB full diploma. I don't know the answer to this one, so I'm fascinated to see what you come up with.
Yeah, well, when it gets to sticky, tricky questions like this, of course, admission people can always answer, it depends, and then just walk away.
Yeah.
I will lean on it depends for this reason. If the student is applying for aerospace engineering, all right, those high-level maths and sciences, even if you are, to your point, as you said earlier, back in the 1900s when we went to college, right?
Yeah.
The well-rounded was a term you heard a lot. Now what we will acknowledge very quickly is, sure, in a class like ours of 4,000, there's still plenty of well-rounded kids. We also have some incredibly pointy kids too, right? Who are all in on just a very singular piece of what they do. And in those kind of cases, a kid that's going to be building our planes, that's going to be building autonomous vehicles here in the next couple of years, I am good with high-level math, high-level science, and not the full IB diploma. Conversely, today, we just opened the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School of Public Policy at Georgia Tech. A full IB diploma for a student like that sounds pretty darn good to me. So I do think that it depends, A, with the college, and B, with the major within the college to answer that question.
Thank you. And in general, I'm scanning the Q&A box, which is just pouring in, which is quite the compliment to you, Rick. Stuff that is sort of says, is it better to do X or Y?
Yeah.
The answer is always some combination of it depends. It depends upon the student. It depends upon the environment in which they are coming from. They're almost impossible questions for us to answer. So when someone says, is it better to be AP or IB? It depends. Is it better to do SAT or ACT? It depends. Is it better to get an A in this class or an A in this class? Again, it depends. So we won't answer any of them other than to say it depends. Here are a lot of questions of this flavor.
Okay.
And again, I'm speaking to your highly selective mindset.
Okay.
A bad thing happened. I got a bad grade. Am I now ruined forever?
Mhm.
You've heard this question in some version 1,000 times. Speak
Yeah.
to it, please.
So the answer is no. The answer is also we want to hear about it. So for instance, let's just say, I did not see that specific question, but let's just say a student makes, 2 Ds in the spring of the sophomore year. Are they forever, blacklisted, never going to get into any college or any college that, they deem to be worth going to? The answer is no. There could be a very, very good explanation for that, and we want to hear about that. On the Common Application, a section that does not need to be used, but is there for those very reasons, is the additional information section. And this is where, if that's the case, if you are otherwise doing very well, things seem to look really good, you're solid in all areas, and then there's this blip, we'll call it, you should not leave that to our imaginations, but you should use that section. It is there for a reason to describe. And sometimes that is mom and dad got a divorce. I got mono and missed 2 months of school. Something about, life circumstances. All of those are there for that reason. It's also a section I find that gives a kid who's never left a line blank in their life a lot of anxiety because they feel like they need to put something there. And that's just not the case. We're trying to build these applications for really big pools. And so it's there for those reasons.
Yeah, and as you were saying it, the question came in, oh, I have a kid who got a B and a C in freshman year. Can they apply to Georgia Tech? And I think you simply said, of course you can. Just explain what happened.
I mean, honestly, a B and C in freshman year, I don't even know if you have to explain that. Like, that's not
Because
what I think of as tragic. That's not what I think of. I mean, happy to go ahead and explain it. I mean, we may dismiss that as not relevant, and that doesn't hurt you. But look, that kid was 14 in the freshman year. We're going to be far more concerned with the trend. And so this is the thing. I mean, we do not need to get into this, nor should we. But cumulative GPA versus how you got there, right? How you got there on your trend line, how you got there on your choice of courses, all of that is what's getting taken into consideration. You are welcome to explain the B and the C in the freshman year, but that's not what I was thinking when we were answering that question.
this is a sidebar, and Rick, I'm throwing it out there. I sense you'll agree with me, but if you
Yeah.
don't, speak to it. So many of these questions come from a place of fear.
Yep.
Have we somehow did ourselves wrong?
Yeah.
We're not admitting numbers. You're not a spreadsheet to us. You're a deeply human critter who was somewhere between 13 and 17 as they were going through your journey. We expect there to be bumps. We just want to know who you are. Will you fit here? Will you succeed here? Will you carry others along in your riptide? There is no sort of we don't wake up in the morning and say, how can we say no to as many humans as possible as
Yeah.
quickly as possible?
Okay.
Rick, speak to that.
No, I mean, I would just 100% agree. And let me tie what you just said with the example you now cited about B and C in ninth grade. A trend, back from the very beginning, a trend in colleges around the country. And I would think likely an increasing trend for a variety of reasons we don't need to get into, is that there are many schools now factoring out the ninth grade from a GPA standpoint. And this is, of course, easier than ever to do with AI, right? As we said earlier about You can program it to calculate in whatever you want and calculate out whatever you would like. But there are many schools, and as you go visit and these schools come to your high school, you should be asking this question. But there's a lot of schools that are saying, look, ninth grade, we acknowledge you're transitioning from middle school. You're taking classes that are not going to really look anything like the kind of classes you're taking in college. And you had 2 more full years, sometimes 2.5, depending on when schools are making the decision, to demonstrate what you're really like as a student. I think that points to this idea of grace, essentially, which is what you're describing. And
Yeah.
that is, we are taking into consideration what it means to actually be a human, not a number on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, and so there was some pushback in the Q&A saying, yeah, this is a lovely speech gang. But all the statistics seem to indicate that people with good grades and good test scores get better outcomes. And that's valid, but speaking analogously, tall, good-looking people tend to get more dates than folks who are neither. It doesn't mean that both don't date. We just don't want you to be filled with doom and gloom because a bad thing happened. We don't want you sort of sit wallowing in the depths of depression because there was a B minus in a push. There is no sort of the end of the possible. You should have awareness around what is a good list for you to apply to. But Rick and I both believe if you don't get rejected by at least one college, you didn't try hard enough. I mean, this is the time to put yourself out there and dare to risk. It's just be sensible as you balance it. Okay, here's another one for you. I saved this for the end last time, but your answer was so damn good that I'd love you to do it now. What do you think is the best role for parents as they go through this journey with their kids?
So, I mean, I've thought a lot about this and written a lot about this over the years. And frankly, in a lot of ways, the reason we wrote the book is because my co-author is a college counselor, and I've been on the higher ed side for 2 decades. We've seen this go so incredibly right and so just train wreck wrong. And the thing is that if you have 3 kids or 2 kids, you get to see this happen twice or maybe 3 times. We've seen this cycle repeat itself year after year for over 20 years now. And so there are patterns. And one of the things I would say is that what I see for parents is, look, most parents listening tonight, most parents that will listen to this, down the road, did, as we said earlier, go to college back in the 1900s. They might have typed their essay. They might not have submitted it online. They did things in a very different way. There's a lot of stuff about the college admission process that's fundamentally shifted and changed in the last 7 years, let alone in the last 17 or 27 years. And so they don't have all the answers when it comes to the college admission process. What they do have and what is invaluable is perspective. And it's a little bit of what you just said earlier. This is the role I think parents play, is being a coach and offering perspective. And as you said earlier, like, what is life often filled with? Reroutes, speed bumps, and unpredictable situations. All of us run into that. And I believe the college admission experience, if done right, actually teaches many good lessons for college itself and life beyond. So in that regard, I think that's what parents have, right? They have the ability to say to a student, that neighbor 3 doors down who, now you look at is so successful and so happy and all this stuff. Let him tell you his story about how things went, with the college that he didn't get into, or the job he didn't get, or the way that, he had to settle for this place that, seemed like his 3rd or 4th choice and life actually turned out fine. I think that is what is so incredibly important for parents, to be curious, to listen, and to continue to coach towards perspective, right? I think that's critical.
I love that. And let me give you a trick as parents that you might like. Our kids, they're sort of going day to day, but you sort of see their growth all along. So you remember that chemistry teacher they hated as a freshman became their advisor and best teacher as a senior. You see that. You see that sort of their fear of public speaking that happened early in their career disappeared when they went on stage. You see that. You have this perspective. And every semester, you have the ability to sort of write down all the cool stuff that your kid did that semester. I would just keep that log going. And then when college admission season rolls around, just hand it to your kid and say, these are all the things I remember you doing, and these are all the ways I saw you grow. And it's an incredible gift from you to them of both perspective and accomplishment because they just don't remember. So that's sort of a tip to the wise. Just so you know, there are 79 questions in the inbox. We've answered 25 of them so far, so we're cooking along. Because of all these questions, I mean, we want to get the chance to answer them. Peter, could you launch the poll for GuideWell so that people can sort of get a sense of how to get more information? And gang, if you'd be happy, please just follow this up. And that way we can answer your specific questions like, should I take SAT or ACT? Should I do this thing or that thing? What about this question I have over here? Because we're not going to get to all of them. Carly, did you want to chime in with something?
Oh, I was just going to share the screen so that we could, sorry, hold on. Am I sharing my screen? No, sorry. I was just going to share my screen so we could show how to learn more for
Well, I
both of
guess
you.
we'll use the follow-up poll while you're sort of working
Yes.
on your screen sharing. And while that is happening, Rick, my favorite thing you did last time we spoke was you talked about the Georgia Techs to come. That, 20, 25 years ago when you started, Georgia Tech wasn't famous. That the wonderful pieces of your school didn't become more wonderful because you got more famous. And I remember you sort of said, if you want to find me 20 years ago today, go look at Virginia Tech because everything I was, they are. And, I have such regard for them. What are some other gems in the Rick file?
Well, one of the things I will say, it goes back a little bit to parents. And this is, my kind of sky banner message that I would just love to leave parents with, especially now that I have a junior in high school. And so I'm living what I've written about, a good bit over the years. And I can just say it this way. Parents of high school students should talk to fewer parents of other high school students about college admission and more parents of current college students or recent college grads. Because, and we were at a party, my wife and I were at a party the other day of junior parents, and it's like they know just enough to make it sound like it's right, but it's just so not right and so not helpful or healthy, right? And this seems to happen no matter what city you live in or what high school your kids go to, where all of a sudden that little thread then gets taken and exaggerated, and all of a sudden, no kid from our high school has been admitted to that school in the last 5 or 10 years. And did you hear that the school down the street got all their kids in and it's easier there anyway, and they don't grade inflate and all this stuff. So I think though, if you talk to parents of current college students, what you hear them say is what we were talking about earlier, and that is, man, he wasn't even looking at that place when he was a junior and got super excited about it and, got in, and it's just been amazing. Or, she didn't get into her dream school or her top choice, ended up going to this other place, and man, she's a tour guide now. She just loves it, and she's dating a guy that we like, and she has an internship lined up, and life is good. I just think let high school parents talk to other high school parents about like the most recent football game or a play that's coming up or some other party down the road, and not college admission. That would be one of my biggest pieces of advice.
Um, for Carly, for me, for Rick, the two deadliest words in our space always begin with the words "I heard."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because whatever follows those two words is a combination of pant-wettingly terrifying and wrong. Right? So if you sort of find yourself in that mode, run for the exits. Carly, were you able to conquer your technological challenges, or should we just keep marching along?
If you can't see the screen, then
We,
clearly I did not.
all right, verbalize it. What can people do to learn more about GuideWell?
Yes. So to learn more about GuideWell, please fill out the poll, especially if we did not get to your question. If you want to learn more, we have these incredible speakers tonight who spoke to you frankly and shared their expertise. And we would love to individualize that for you. So our GuideWell team will reach out to you. Please also look at all of Rick's incredible resources. That should be up on the screen, the Truth About College Admission podcast and book by the same name. And at GuideWell, we would love to help guide your student.
Um, Rick's podcast, The Truth About College Admission, despite never inviting me to be on it, not that I am remotely bitter about that lack of invitation, Rick. I've let it go. It's not a problem. Is probably, I think, sort of the most eloquent, most honest place you can go to get sort of information from a broad perspective. So thank you for doing it. Rick, I think you gave your parting words when you were sort of saying to parents earlier, but is there anything else you would like to say before I sign off by saying same time next year?
Same time next year. The last thing I'll say to you, Paul, is invitation is coming. I'm looking forward to having you on the podcast, and we can share that out next time with everybody who tunes in.
Gang, thank you so very, very much. We hope it was worth the hour of your time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul and Rick.
Have a
Thank
great
you,
night.
everyone.